Hey, friends, thank you for joining me on another episode of the Uncommon Runner podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Gilbert, aka the Scarecrow Runner. I hope you're doing well today. Going to have an episode that I recorded a couple months ago, right as I was relaunching this podcast, and decided to hold off on it and launch it when I was ready and situated in a better format. So I have Aaron Dana as my guest on this episode. Aaron has done a lot of phenomenal things in the last 3, 4, 5 years as an ultra runner. He has run a lot of different races and has done a lot of amazing things. And most recently, he ran 100 up in the Pacific Northwest, which we talk about. And we talk about the challenges that he faces and the obstacles that he faces as an ultra runner. And then we flip things over and we talk and dig deep into his experience at the last man standing event that he did called the Tennessee Mile, and he's ran that the last couple years. And this year he finally took home the crown of being the last man standing. But we talk about the adversity that he faces as an ultra runner, the challenges that he has faced over the last couple years running that race, and what he's done to overcome and to persevere and to ultimately become a last man standing. So it was a fun episode to catch up with Aaron. I've had him on the Scarecrow Runner podcast in the past a few times, and it's just always good to have somebody that that you're comfortable with, and that you can banter back and forth with. Aaron comes from upstate New York. He's a Buffalo Bills fan. He is a good friend. He's a man of God. He loves the Lord. He has a beautiful wife and children. And so I'm excited to have him on the episode today to share with you guys, and I hope you'll get something out of it. It's a treat. It's a little on the long side, but as those of us that are ultra runners understand, hey, sometimes you got to go long. So without further ado, here's the episode with Aaron Dana, Last Man Standing. I hope you enjoy it. And I've got Aaron Dana with me. Aaron's, like I said, Aaron's been on a few times with me before. I'm blessed to have him as a friend and just a repeat guest. I love talking to Aaron and picking his mind and hearing different things. Aaron has done some amazing things. Even the last time I talked to him, he had been doing amazing things, but it gets even better because he's persistent. He is a man of God. He loves the Lord and he digs deep. And man, if there's any definition of perseverance, Aaron, I'd have to say you are one person that has. If there would be a tattoo on your forehead that says perseverance, that would be you, brother. Because I mean, you grind, and I see it. I know you well enough. It's not just like you're blowing smoke out there for people to get likes and hearts on your post. I know your work ethic, and I mean, we've never met, but I've seen your training, and you just dig deep and you just keep going. And so it's encouraging, it's inspiring, but it's also refreshing to know, there's real people out there that do hard things, and you're not in it for the glamour or to get accolades. You're in it because you love doing it. It it just pulls a lot of stuff out of you. So, welcome to the show. I'm excited to dig in. And so, you've had a little bit of time off since your last adventure, about what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks coming up. And we'll dig into that here in a minute. But Aaron's been ultra running for, gosh, what has it been now? Like 7, 8 years,
No,
6 years.
5.
Is it? See, time flies, but yet it doesn't. So
Yeah.
Aaron's not been ultra running for very long. I remember when he first started,
I
and
mean, technically 4. Ultra running. I've
I've
been
been
running
running
for about
ultras
5.
for 10 years. And so, yeah, Aaron's come in 4 or 5 years, and, he came in swinging, and he's done some amazing things. Aaron lives in upstate New York. And so he does a lot of his training in the Adirondacks,
Yep.
and does a lot of hiking, a lot of hiking. And I love watching the videos that you post and the pictures that you post, because it's like, man, that's just like, I remember one of your posts on Instagram you had shared, and you're like, if you don't believe in God, I don't know what you're thinking, right? Because it was like you're above the tree line, you're above the cloud line, and it was just like breathtaking, beautiful views. And so, yeah, it's great stuff to see. And I have to live vicariously through you for for the mountainous experience. You are a true mountain man, and here I am on I can't say completely flat plains, but I'm a flat lander for the most part. I get a little elevation and some training, but not like what you would. Your elevation in one workout would be like mine for a whole month at least. So, um, but in 2024, Aaron has he went out and ran the Mid-State Tennessee Mile for the fourth time, and then just a couple weeks ago did the Crazy Mountain 100. So we're going to dig into that, Aaron. Let's go ahead and we'll touch base on the most fresh experience that you had. And that was the Crazy Mountain 100. That was out in western
Montana.
Yeah, in the western part of the United States. Aaron's never ran out that way before. And as I mentioned, he trains in the eastern part of the United States in the mountains, but the western mountains were a little bit different of a beast. Go ahead and just share with me what made you decide to go west, young man, and what Kool-Aid were you drinking,
Yeah.
and what made you want to just go Crazy Mountain? Because I mean, if you had a choice of hundreds, you've got a lot of hundreds between upstate New York and Montana. Why the Crazy Mountain 100, and what pushed you that way?
It was pretty easy. My buddy Eric Keenley from Mid-State Mile, we've run that together we both ran it for the last 4 years, and he was running the Crazy Mountain 100. He attempted it last year and didn't finish, so he was going to be running it again. So we've always talked about doing something together in Montana, whether I go visit him and we just do some hikes. So I knew he was going to be signing up again to run it. And so I was like, you know what? What the heck? It kind of scares me. It looks intimidating. So let's do it. So that was basically it. Eric was the motivation to want to do it. I heard really good things about the race, that it was really well put on, that it was gorgeous and breathtaking. And the only race I've done out west, I ran the Zion 100K.
I remember that.
Which isn't really like mountainous, but it's still out west, a drier climate. And I like the idea of a drier climate after running in Tennessee the month before when it was 100 degrees and the humidity was crazy. Like, you know what? I can handle. I mean, the temperature for crazy was like in the 80s and it was dry. So it was great. Like the heat wasn't a factor. So I was ready for that because I'm used to the East Coast just sweating buckets constantly, all day, all night. And so that's a reason I was looking forward to the West. But yeah, Crazy Mountain was everything that you've heard that it is. If you've heard anything about it, it's a super tough mountainous race. It traverses through the Crazy Mountains, which is separate from the Rocky Mountains. It's like its own little mountain range. But it's super remote. There's one aid station that they gotta hike in all their gear like 8 miles on horseback and have an aid station set up the whole time. So it's pretty remote. And it's just rugged and it's relentless, man. Montana is huge. Like the state is huge. The land you can see for miles. It's called Big Sky, Montana for a reason. Like you can just see for miles. The hills, the foothills are like mountains. And then when you get into the mountains, you're like, holy cow, like this is crazy. So it was a really cool experience I'm used to East Coast mountains. And on the East Coast, when you're in the mountains, you're pretty much always in the trees unless you get really high. Maybe at the summit, you get a clearing, you get a view. So there, it's just pretty much views the whole time, especially the higher you get. So that's just an awesome part about running out west is that yes, there's more sun exposure, but the views are way more frequent, which is a good motivator when you're doing something really tough versus if you're just grinding in the woods and all you can see is the trees.
So let me ask you, Aaron, with all the mountain training that you've done in the East Coast versus going out to the Crazy Mountains, Are the mountains in the east more were they more challenging for you and prepared you the right way for what was in the crazy mountains? Or is it completely different?
As far as the
Like the
ter
terrain and
yep, the terrain. Yeah, so the Adirondacks in particular, they don't have we don't have switchbacks in the north. In the Northeast is where a lot of the really tough mountain ranges are. I know there's mountains all through the Carolinas and Georgia, but they're not quite as technical as the Adirondacks and the White Mountains in New Hampshire. And there's no switchbacks up there. So it's just you're going straight up the mountain. There might be a little bit of a switchback nest to it, but it's the grade is a lot steeper and the terrain is a lot more rugged. Like there's if I go to the Adirondacks, if I'm climbing mountains, there's not much running. Maybe as you're approaching the mountain, but when you start climbing the mountain, there's you can't run. The terrain just doesn't allow it. Um, the crazy mountains were tough, but they had a lot of switchbacks. So the grade was less intense than I was used to, which was welcomed. And yes, there was a lot of rocks, but they were smaller and there was a lot more sections that you had good footing. You know what I mean? Like it was flat ground. Like the Adirondacks in particular, you're rarely on flat ground. You're always on boulders or roots, and your
yeah.
foot is so. But there were a lot of rocks in the crazies. They were smaller rocks. They were sharper, so you're kicking a lot of small rocks, more like ankle turners. So that was what I noticed that the big difference. Even if the grade allowed you to run, sometimes the rocks were so bad that you just couldn't run safely unless you're used to that kind of terrain, which I'm not. You know, the lead guys probably ran the whole thing. So yeah, I mean, there was some very sketch sections that we had to do at night that you're definitely not running.
I remember you had
Um,
posted something about the most sketchiest section that you've ever
yeah, it was
done.
just you were traversing across the side of a mountain. It was loose rock and like sand almost. And it was you were going you could look off with your headlamp and it's not straight down, but it was as steep as I've seen any mountains there. And it just keeps going and going. And you had this like you had to traverse across the side. It was super sketch, and there was a lot of people that were really freaked out. I just took my time. It was still scary. I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this right now. And it wasn't even just how challenging it was how challenging for how long. Like I've done some sketchy things in the Adirondacks, and it might be like a little section you get through it and you're like, okay, I'm good. This went on for like 10, 15 minutes. I was like, wow, this is really sketch for a while. And it's pitch black. Um, so yeah, that was and that's almost 60 miles in. So you have a lot of fatigue. You know, you're in the night, you're tired, you know, you're probably a little bit over it. Um, and they talked about this section, so we knew it was going to be hard, but it was harder than I expected it to be.
Was
But
that the
yeah, there
toughest
was
area for you?
that was it was tough. It was tough. Just yeah, that was probably tough. And then the ascent up because you're going over this pass. The ascent up that climb was pretty steep too. It was like steeper than any of the other climbs that we've done. It was less switchbacks, more straight up, and it was just a grind, you know. And at that point, we felt like we got through the toughest section of the race, which it was. You're kind of out of the mountains and making your way towards the foothills at that point, but it was still a brutal race after that. Like it was still a brutal race after that. But yeah, man, West Coast is fun. Um, I definitely am trying to figure out which West Coast race I want to do next year because I want to be able to do both. You
Was there any time in that particular race that you didn't feel like you were going to be able to keep going, or did you feel pretty confident your body was feeling good, your nutrition and hydration, everything was on point?
I felt confident that I would finish. Um, it was just it took a lot longer than I expected. I didn't have any major issues. that I felt like were going to take me out of the race. It was, I was just moving. I was running it with a friend the whole time. So we kind of had to go at the pace of whoever was going the slowest, that's the pace you had to go at. So we just had to stick together. Um, so it took us both a lot longer to do than we expected. And it was just a grind, man. It was just one of those things you're like, I just have to get this done. Cause yeah, after a while you're kind of over the beauty, you're kind of over the like how amazing it is, and you just want to be done.
Sure.
And I mean, I think the cutoff was 36 hours and it took us like 34 hours and 20 minutes. So it was close. It was closer than I wanted to be. We were not really chasing cutoffs, but I was very aware of what the cutoffs were going into the night. And I saw that time, it kept shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. We'd have 3 hours from cutoff at an aid station. Then it's 2.5 hours. Then it was 2 hours. Then it was an hour and 45. I'm like, all right, we're not trending in the right direction.
No,
We have to at least keep this pace. So I never thought that I wouldn't finish it, but I was worried that we would get so slow that we might not. That was my worry. At mile 70, our coach and crew chief became our pacer. So we got a pacer for the last 30 miles. So yeah, it was discussed that if I wanted to or if I felt like I needed to go ahead, I could. So yeah, we discussed it, and I kind of did at the end. We had two aid stations to go. I got to the second to last aid station, and I was like, I couldn't see them anywhere because the pacer was with Eric. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go, and if they catch up to me, they catch up to me, and they did. They ended up catching up to me, but that I was kind of like a carrot of like, we should catch him because he finally, he realized we're getting behind at these cutoff times. So so that's just kind of how I did the rest of the way. I just, if I was ahead, they would catch up. It was a little bit of a carrot, but we stayed together pretty much after that point. Um, but yeah, I'd be interested to see what it would be like if I ran the race solo. But also, like, there are benefits to running with other people,
sure.
and the night is long. And unless you have a whole crew of pacers lined up, um, it's just nice to have somebody out there with you because the
Yeah.
night can be super long, and just like we moved really well together through the night. We passed a ton of people on the climbs. Like we were super strong on the climbs, like all day, all night. And that was just motivating to have like somebody else out there with you and you're just like grinding up these climbs. And so yeah, like there's I don't yeah, there's pros and cons, but like I was trying to use it as an opportunity to learn though. You know what I mean? Because I can be so competitive as far as like wanting to push myself as much as I can, but like having to maybe throttle back a little bit and be a support to somebody else. Like that was a challenge I wasn't expecting, but maybe that was a challenge that I needed because it's so easy just to focus on running and, giving it your all, but it's almost like you're crewing. There was times where it felt like I was pacing him, and I wasn't expecting that. But that was also something that I had to be willing to do. And honestly, I wasn't for a bit of it. I was resenting that I had to. And I got kind of a bad attitude about it because I'm like, come on, man, like we need to go. Like we need to do this. Like let's get serious. And so like in hindsight, like I needed to go through that. I needed to have that experience and I needed to learn those things about myself of like, hey, if you want to run with other people, if you want to do things with other people, y- you're limited to those people. You
Yep.
know what I mean? Like I'm wired to want to do things by myself because I know I can do it the right way. Just like in my business, I'm having to learn to let go and delegate and entrust other people do something because if I want to do more, I need other people. So I think that was definitely a lesson that as much as it was a challenge for me out there, like that was a challenge that I needed and lessons that I needed to learn. And I'm still kind of unpacking it, honestly, because it's something that I can see in myself is a weakness that if I see someone else struggling and they're not able to like keep up or whatever, I I get a little frustrated with it instead of having a little bit more compassion, having more of a thinking like how can I inspire them or how can I encourage them instead of just getting frustrated with it. Um, so I think it's something that I've seen that in myself, not just in this race, in other areas, especially business or even with my kids. When you have certain expectations and they're not being met. So so yeah, man, it was a beautiful race. I don't know if I'll do it again next year, but I would definitely do it again. And if anyone wants to do a very challenging 100-mile race, I mean, it was super well done. It was super tough, and you will feel very accomplished. And the belt buckle is amazing. I mean, I just kept thinking
Yeah.
about that belt buckle. I'm like, I just got to get that buckle. I can't not get that buckle. I mean, it
Yeah,
was definitely a
it's
carrot
definitely a
carrot at the end.
sweet looking buckle for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely a great accomplishment. All right, so we're going to switch gears here, talking about adversity and challenging and doing stuff. Where you're chasing after cutoffs and such. The Mid State Mile, the Tennessee Mile, you you have done this 4 times now, and it. I've followed along with each one that you've done, and you continue to make strides and make adjustments. And I know we both know when you run a race, you can run the same race constantly, right? And it's never going to be exactly the same because, whether it's the weather or your body or the competition or whatever, you can run the same course over and over and over, even during the same race. You're running multiple laps, right? And it's like no loop is ever the same because the lighting changes, the temperature changes, everything's constantly changing. And so even though you've ran it 4 times, each time that you've ran it, I know has been a different experience for you, and you've had to pull and dig deep in different ways. Um, so let's jump into Mid State Mile, the fourth time. I'm just going to let you take us into start to finish, however you want to do it. I'll ask you questions along the way, but just kind of take us into your mental prep and what you did to prep for this, because I know there's a lot of training that you did. And for those that don't know what the Mid State Tennessee Mile is, it's a last man standing event. It's 1 mile ish loop, or was it? Is it a loop?
1.1 mile loop. Yep.
Yep. And so it also has the nickname of Murder Mile, right? And that's not that is not a play on words, friends. That is legit. Kind of touch on what training you did, because the elevation for Murder Mile is a beast, and the reason why they call it Murder Mile, and just kind of take us through what you did to prepare yourself mentally and physically.
Yeah. So yeah, this race has been part of my life for the last, since 2021, the first time I ran it. I saw Chad Wright run it the year before, and I thought, wow, that's a proper challenge. And it scared me, it intimidated me. Every 20 minutes you got to start a new loop, and it's just relentless. Like the whistle keeps blowing, and if you're not there to start that loop in 20 minutes, you're out. So, I can fast forward to this year, but I've run it 3 times before this year. First year I got third place. I felt great about that. Definitely blew my mind. Second year I didn't do as well. The heat got to me. And every year the heat gets to me. So last year ended up going, I got second place. We went 32 miles. We set the course record 41 hours or something like that. And so last year was amazing. Like I was happy with how it went, but like I started fading like pretty quick. I felt super locked in until I didn't. And then my brain, everything just started like shrinking and I just wanted to be done. And I as much as I look back, it was the the mental fatigue and like the wear and tear on my brain. Like um I wasn't prepared for that. I didn't know how to problem solve it last year. So this year going into the race, I've kind of got my training dialed in. Like I do a lot in the mountains over the winter. I do a lot of hill repeats because where I live, I don't have crazy big climbs, but I do a lot of hill repeats and I do a lot of strength work. So I'm doing strength 3 to 4 or 2 to 3 times a week. And I supplement with riding my bike just to keep my body feeling less beat up from the impact. So, and then this year, I didn't do any races leading into Mid-State Mile. So, coming into the race, I was a little nervous because I hadn't done any like big races leading into the race to kind of give me that confidence. But I had done a ton of stuff in the mountains, a lot of long days, a lot of hard days. And I felt like my body was just strong. I felt really good in the mountains, good on the climbs, good on the descents, all that. So I felt good physically. I'd been doing a ton of strength work, but my confidence was a little shaky because I didn't have a race. You know how like you go long
Hmm.
enough without doing a race, you're like, do I still got
You
this?
forget what it's like, right? You're like,
Yeah,
I know I got it, but do I got it?
but do I got it? It's like it is good to have those lead up races. But anyways, going into it, I felt good. I wasn't dealing with any injuries. I There was nothing I was worried about physically. But and the biggest thing was that I wanted to continue to persevere, even though not that it just got hard, but that like when my brain was just done and I was just done. Like I wanted to keep going, and I wanted to like let my crew, let my wife know if I was having those struggles, and I wanted to stay locked in. Like last year, things got hard, and then when they finally got like too hard, like my mind was just I was just done, and I found a way out. Like I mean, I was having some physical issues too, but like I could have kept going. So that always bothered me. So this year I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to mentally quit. But so coming into the race, I felt strong. You know, I trained Becca Jones, who's the race director, is also my coach. And she doesn't have us do crazy high volume.
Yeah, I
I
remember
honestly,
talking to her
yeah,
last year, and she was kind of sharing some of her training plans and what she expects, and I was really surprised because yeah, she's low volume, but you know, it shows that you can conquer these things not putting ridiculous amounts of volume on the body.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, the reason that I like the approach, because there's a scale, right? Are you under training or are you overtraining? Are you hitting your ceiling or are you hitting the floor or are you right in the middle? So for me, there's a range of what you can do. And we all see people that are training crazy high volume. And we think we have to do crazy high volume to do these things, but you don't. Like, I don't think I ran more than 40 miles in a week. And it wasn't multiple weeks. Like I average in the 30s. But I'm also supplementing with riding my bike, doing the Stairmaster, which doesn't really count towards my mileage, and strength work. So when you combine all those things, like I'm probably training for 15 hours a week,
Hmm.
but it's not all running. So you can build fitness, you can build strength, you can build durability in your body without having to only run. And I really like that. I like being able to mix it up. I like having a lot of different things that I'm doing. And I like that I'm not injured and I'm not chronically burned out. I have done higher mileage in the past when I first started, and I always felt like I was overtraining, like I
Hmm.
was doing too much, and I was always battling injuries. I haven't been injured since I started working with Becca, and I've been getting progressively stronger and faster every year. I'm almost 40. I want to be doing this for a while. So longevity is my goal.
Sure.
And I want to be present with my family. I want to be with it mentally. I don't want to be training where I'm a zombie. Like I know a lot of people that train high mileage that don't have families or don't have kids. Great. Do that.
Yeah.
You have the
Yeah.
time. You can be a zombie. I can't be a zombie. I have a job, all that kind of stuff. So anyways, training I felt like I was ready. So going into this race, um it was hot this year. It was really hot this year. It was I want to say it was like 97, 98 was the high on Saturday, and then the high on Sunday was like 99, and the humidity was insanely high. And the thing about the heat, it's not just how hot it gets during the day, it's how hot it stays during the
Yeah.
night. So the nighttime was in the 70s and still like 100% humidity. I was soaked to the bone the whole race. Sweat, just sweat. I didn't need, I mean, I used ice. I put ice bandana, ice in my gloves, ice in my arm sleeves. But yeah, man, it was hot. So this race, it really doesn't become a race until after 24 hours where you really start to see who's still left, right? But you have to get to that point. You have to take
Right.
care of yourself. The night loses a lot of people. And for whatever there it's just so easy to get behind on stuff. You can so easily get behind on your hydration or your electrolytes and your nutrition, but I think a lot of people get taken out because of poor management of their hydration and electrolytes because we're sweating so much and it's relentless, man, to just have to keep shoving food in your face and just you have to just keep eating. And I get tired of eating, but I have to keep eating. Sometimes I'll drink calories because I'm just tired of eating because every loop you have an opportunity to eat and you need to,
Hmm.
honestly. So yeah, man, this going into this year, like or this race, the first day was very hot. I I was struggling mentally for a while. I mean, I'd say almost up until like the nighttime or maybe close to the nighttime, mentally, I just didn't feel like I could lock in. I felt all these doubts, all these fears. It was almost like the worst case scenario. Like my mind was just envisioning, like, well, what if you just trip on that rock and you fall and you hurt yourself and then you're out of the race. Like that's a way you could get out. And after a while, I was just like, fine, then let it be that. If that's what happens, then it's going to happen. Okay. But you don't have to like fantasize about falling and getting taken out of this race. But my mind just did not want to cooperate.
Did you
And
ever feel like your mind was throwing comparison from the last year or the last years while you're running? Be like, dude, you're not doing as well as you were last year.
I don't know if it was a comparison, but I'm pretty sure that my brain remembers what's coming. And it didn't want it. And I'll say this, I think going into the race this year, like I'm not saying I was burned out by the race, but this year I was like, I gotta win this thing because I don't think I can run this race again. Like I need a break because it's just so demanding. It's not like, hey, go out and run 100 miles at your own pace. If it takes you longer, it takes you longer, but you'll get it done. Like this, there's a whistle every 20 minutes. And if you want to take 2 seconds longer, you're done. You know what I mean? Like you don't have extra time. And so there's just something about this race that is it's a lot more mentally demanding on you.
Does
So I
does the
think my mind just knows that that's coming and knows the suffering that we're in for.
does that whistle ever, has that whistle ever messed with you? I mean, you hear the whistle blowing, right? I think of Hunger Games, right? When someone dies, the cannon goes off and you know someone's out. And the whistle blows, you know someone's out. Does it get annoying to where you hear the whistle and you're like, man, someone else just dropped, and you're like,
No, I mean the whistle is the blow is blowing to start the new lap, so it's not guaranteed that someone dropped. Um, I wish they did a cannon so you could hear every time someone dropped. That would be kind of cool. Then you see their face in the sky, like, oh, we lost.
oh
Because like
no.
I don't even know who we lose half the time because I'm running at a certain pace. I mean, there's so many people that run this race that I've never even seen. You know what I mean? You don't even know that they were there. Um, but no, I don't. I think my mind it just didn't want to cooperate, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna keep going. And you know, my wife was like reminding me, she's like, "Baby, everybody's struggling. It is hot today. Everybody's over it." Like within the first day, and that was like last year. My mind was locked in for like right off the bat the whole time. So yeah, I think there was a little bit of comparison of like, man, you were so locked in last year, and not you're not locked in at all. But I didn't have any physical issues. Just my mind was just not getting locked in. So I prayed a lot. You know, I told my wife, I'm like, have my family pray and have my buddies pray, and like I just felt like I was being attacked by all these doubts. Um, and I don't know what happened, but they got quiet, and I was able to get locked in and get focused, like going into the night. Um, and a lot of times during the nighttime, Becca is encouraging everybody to be talking to each other. She's like, you guys need each other. And you do. When you're on this race, you're starting the lap with everybody, every lap, which is what I love about this race. You're not alone. I mean, maybe your pace will differ somewhat, but like there's energy, there's other people out there. You're seeing everybody grinding, everybody struggling and keep going. So it's motivating. It's encouraging to see it. Um and yeah, man, there was some other people out there that I was watching. I'm like, man, they look so strong for so long. So I was like, man, I don't know. Like, am I going to be able to throw down with these guys when I'm out there? So fast forward to, you know, let's say 24 hours. So every 12 hours in this race, there's a 20-minute intermission. So every 12 hours is a 20-minute break. It's just like a free lap, and it's spent resting. Change your shoes, socks, whatever you need. But like the people that know this race, like they know you have to try to sleep. So I tried to sleep 12 hours. I didn't really sleep. I tried to sleep at 24 hours. Didn't really sleep, but I rested. It's just like you have to rest your eyes. You just have to quiet, like let your mind be quiet. So after 24 hours, I don't know how many people we had, but we maybe had like six or seven people. And it was far fewer people than we've had in the past years. I'm like, man, this race is people are dropping. But I could tell because it was super hot. But made it through the night. I was nervous about going through the night because my dad was going to be crewing me, and he was going to be the only one there because my wife was like, well, she'll sleep the first night and then be able to crew me for the second night because we were planning on going through 2 nights. And so my dad was going to be my crew. But like my dad's never crewed me before. Like he's been to that race, but he was nervous. I was nervous. And I was like, I told Anna, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, I told my wife, I'm like, I don't know if he's going to be able to do a good job, but he did. He handled it fine. It was, you know, no issues going through the night. But you go to 24 hours and there's only a handful of people. And at that point, you're kind of sizing everybody up. You start to see chinks in the armor of people. You start to see, oh, they're struggling on the downhills. You know, with this course, there's There's two climbs, two big hills, but the first hill is the biggest. It's the biggest climb, and it's the steepest, longest descent. And the downhills are what usually wear on you the most. Like you can, if someone's struggling, they're gonna run the flats. They're gonna hike as fast as they can on the climbs so they can take their time on the downhills. So after 24 hours, the race this year only went for 32 hours, I think. So after 24 hours, you're starting to see a lot of issues. And people get tight after those breaks too. Like you have to
Oh
stop for
yeah.
20 minutes. You know what it's like when you finish a race. Your body thinks you're done. And then you can't believe you were just running 100 miles. Like, how did I just do that? Now my body doesn't even want to move. So after that intermission, like it's tough for guys to get up and get going again. And there was a few guys that actually dropped because they couldn't get loose again. Um, but yeah, you start to see chinks in the armor. And there's a runner, Darren Jansen, who ran it last year, and him and I spent a lot of very high quality miles together. We linked up for a lot of this race, going through the night, had a lot of great conversations. And we're like, bro, let's link up, let's stick together, and let's show our strength. Because we both said like it's going to be down to us two at the end. Um, and that's what ended up happening. But we moved together, we moved with purpose, and slowly but surely, like we just kept passing every loop. Everyone would run their loop at their own pace, and we would pass people at different points in the race, but we would start passing like certain people sooner and sooner and sooner, which meant those people were slowing down and we were keeping our same pace. And every time we would go by these people, like they'd be like, "Oh man, you guys are looking so strong." We're like, "Yeah, thanks, man. Like, keep up the good work." So we were doing it as a show of strength to be like we're stronger and we can outlast you. And we did. So that was kind of fun to have that with Darren, because everyone had their own issues and they ran their own race, but they were slowing down and they ultimately timed out. So it got down to Darren and I at the end. And now it's like, all right, now what do we do? Because now it's just me and you, bro. And like it's on, right? Like it's either you or me. And we're like, well, we both got a lot in the tank. Like, let's just keep linking up together. Like, why be miserable out there and alone? Like, let's just keep running our race, have good conversation. And so we were doing that, just the two of us. And I think John, the race director, kind of gave us a hard time. Like, what are you guys just going to be like best friends out there now? Like, this is a race. Come on. So, but the heat of the day, so ultimately ended up getting down to me and Darren. It's the two of us. I can't remember for how long we were running just the two of us, but whoever drops first loses and the other guy wins, right? And at this point, all I had to do was outlast Darren. And he was looking strong, but then he started to not look so strong. And he started to really struggle on the downhills. And I remember I had a lap where like he finished several minutes behind me. And I just kept running my pace and he wasn't there. And he was really struggling on the downhills. And so I was like, that was interesting. Like he just really slowed down. And then the next lap, he took off running so fast. I was running laps in about 17 to 17 and a half minutes. Okay. He started running like 15-minute laps consecutively. And I'm like, what is this guy doing? Like, that's not sustainable, bro. Like, what are you doing? So he did that one time. I'm like, that was a little weird. And then the next time we line up, he does it again. He just takes off running. And we didn't run it all together. He just booked it and finished fast. And I'm like, what is this guy trying to get in my head? Like, what is he doing? Like, it's 100 degrees. You shouldn't be running faster. and you were just limping down that hill. Like, what is going on? And he didn't say a word about it. We would just line up and just take off. And he'd take off. He did that like 3 times. So that's like an hour. And I'm coming in at my same pace, but I'm just grinding out there, man. Like the heat was so intense. Like all I could do was endure. All I could do was endure. I would sit down in my chair when I got back. I'd have a fan blowing on me. I'd get all my ice put in all the places, and I would just sit there. And I actually fell asleep. It was the only time I fell asleep in the race. And it was when I was sitting in my chair for 2 minutes. My wife had to hold my head because I fell asleep. I was so spent, man. But I could keep going. And I was like, I just have to keep going. I don't know what Darren's doing. And I was like, if I can just get through the heat of the day, I will be better. I just got to get through this heat. It was like almost 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. And then it started raining, dude. And the whole, like, you could feel the heat broke and it dropped by like 10 degrees and it was raining. And I'm like finishing this lap and I'm like, thank you, God. I'm like, I made it through the heat. Like, it's going to get better. The night's going to come. It's going to get cooler. And I was like, thank God. Like, we got rain. And it wasn't like a heavy rain, but it was enough to cool you down. And you could just feel. Actually, a storm ended up coming through later. But so Darren and I get to this. It starts raining. We start a lap, and he starts running with me. And he's not taking off on a fast loop. And he's like, "How you doing, bro?" And I'm like, "Bro, I'm just enduring, man. That's all I can do right now. I'm just taking it. I'm just taking it." I'm like, "How are you doing?" He's like, "Oh yeah, man, I'm doing good. I had a couple questions I had to answer for myself on those last few loops." I'm like, "Okay. Did you get the answers you needed?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay, good." I wasn't gonna probe. It's personal. Like he's got to run his own race. And so we're doing the loop. We get to the big climb. We get to the top of the climb, and we're probably 7, 8 minutes into the loop. And he's like, "Yeah." So a couple of the questions I had to answer were, he's like, "Well, one thing I was like, I wanted to get to 100 miles, and we had just gotten to 100 miles." I was like, "Okay." He's like, "And the second thing was I wanted to see if I could get you to quit." I was like, "Oh, really?" He's like, "Yeah, I want to see if I could get you to quit." He's like, "Because I'm done." I'm like, "No." I'm like, "No, bro, you're not done." He's like, "Yeah, bro." He's like, "I think I broke my leg."
Oh,
And I'm like, it turns out he did end up having a stress fracture in his shin. So he was in a lot of pain and it was getting worse and worse and worse. And he was very, very struggling on the downhills. So he told me on that loop that he was done. And I still had a loop I had to finish that loop and I had to run another loop. I was like, "Are you serious, man?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm serious." I was like, "All right, well, I'll see you at the end." So I just finished that loop and I came in. I told my crew, I'm like, "He's done. He's done on this one. Like, he's not going to make it back in time." And so the way it works is that I still have to run one more loop by myself. So, I'm sitting there knowing I just won Mid-State Mile, but also I got to stay locked in. Like, it's still a hard course. Anything can happen. And so I just ran that loop the way I ran it 100 times before, and I ran my same pace. I came in, my family, my kids met me up on the trail and they ran in with me. That was super special. All my kids were there. My wife was there. My parents were actually both there to see it and experience it. And it was just amazing, man, because it's not just about persevering and enduring for that race. It was my 4th year running this dang thing. And I've been consistently coming back because I knew I could win the thing. I knew I could put it all together. And it was so special, bro, because like I couldn't believe it was over, but I'm like, all right, I did this thing. And that was probably the toughest like year I've ever been a part of. The heat was just so oppressive. I mean, there's people that have run, the guy that won last year, he didn't make it that far. Like Luke Bolschweiler, who's in that movie, like he didn't make it to the end. Like these guys are all confident, competent people. And I was like, all right, I got it done. And I stuck with it all these years. And every year I learned lessons. Every year I applied those lessons. Like, yes, the heat was oppressive, but I learned to manage it, man. I have cooling strategies. I use the sauna like 4 or 5 times a week and get my body acclimated. But it was just such a relief, man, because every year after I finish this race, I'm always like, well, what could I have done better? What could I have done this different? And this year I was just like, got to celebrate. We did it. We finally did it. Celebrate on the drive home with my wife and be like thanking her for all of her support and being there for me. And, she's learned so much about me and about this sport and just the power of belief, man. Like yes, I put in the training, but there's also so much I've grown mentally in the belief that I have that I can do it. And the belief, I think I said at the end of the race that I never wanted to stop believing that I could win it. And even like near the end of the race, I told Darren, I'm like, I don't want you to ever doubt that you can beat me. I want you to fully believe that you can beat me. And I want to fully believe that I can beat you. And if you don't beat me, or if you lose, that's fine. But last year, I stopped believing that I could win, and I looked at how strong Eric, my competitor, was, and I said I can't beat him, and I ended up losing because I stopped believing. So much of life, like your belief, is what's coming under attack, and trying to get you to believe the doubt that you can't or that you're not good enough or someone else is better. And you look at someone else's strength or you look at the circumstances instead of sticking to that core. Because what did I have to do? My belief was enabling me to just endure and just keep going. It's not that it gave me superpowers, it just gave me the ability to keep going. And that's life, man. Like so much of our life is you're not going to have these warm, fuzzy feelings of faith and belief. It's don't quit, keep going, keep doing what you know to do. And so I think that was probably the biggest lesson I learned this year. And I've learned over the course of years is to have that belief, to have that belief in yourself that you could. And everyone told me this year going into it, Aaron, this is your year, man. This is your year. And I still had a hard time believing it. Um, but I think that, kind of proved to myself that I remember Chad Wright saying one year about me, he said, if Aaron Dana believes that he could win this race, he'll win this race. And he thought I could win it, a couple of years ago. And I could have, but I stopped believing then. You know what I mean? So it was just cool to see everything that I've put together doing this race over the years, like all come together, man. And like, yeah, like you said, you can do the same race every year and have a different outcome, but it's also cool to see how you can build, how you can know yourself better in that environment and be as prepared as you can be. Because, like, yeah, anything could happen, but I was prepared as I could have possibly been and had all the mental things I needed in place to do that. And I did it.
So now that you've done it, man, great testimony. And I know you can apply that not just running wise, but in life in general and in our faith. You know, that's half the battle, right? Is don't quit and keep believing, because so many people lose faith because life gets hard. And that's our source is God and the Holy Spirit and gives us strength And if we persevere and he's with us, we can endure and overcome and conquer anything we put our minds to. Because I mean, like one of my favorite verses, Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. It doesn't say you can do some things, it's all things. And I remember Brandon Kreitz, he told me one time, he likes to say, I can do, you know, not just all things, but hard things, right? And doing the murder mile, that's a hard thing. And you put it all together, and you endured and you persevered and you began to believe in yourself. You overcame, you had adversity with the doubts in your mind. Your body was good, but your mind was not where it needed to be. And I know in races, there's times where your mind is good, but your body's not good. And so you're running injury free, you're feeling great, but your mind is elsewhere. And it's so critical to have a clear mind and to be battling those demons and to be able to overcome it, right? And to get into a clear spot, and then you lock in, right? And you're
Yeah.
like, okay, I got this. I know I can do this. People see, that's the thing, Aaron. It's like so many times everybody around us, if we would just stop and get out of our own heads, everybody around us believes in us, right? Your competitors have said for years, if Aaron wants to win this, he can win this, because because they've seen it, right? It's there, right? You've got that confidence factor. You just had to believe in yourself and know that you could do it and get out of your head. So you overcame, you faced adversity, and you kept pushing, and you got to the finish line. Your competitor tried to burn you out, which when you were saying that, I was like, he's trying to burn Aaron out, right? Going out fast and trying to intimidate you. And that happens. And you stayed the course though, right? You didn't change your plan. You stayed with your same strategy. I'm just going to run my race. And it's like the tortoise and the hare, right? It's like slow and steady wins the race. Because I mean, with that race, even though I've never ran it, but watching the videos, watching the movie, hearing you talk about it, you have to be steady and you can't get crazy. And hearing how Darren would just take off and run these crazy splits, 100 miles into it, it's like you can't be doing that. Because if you change your plan and you deviate from what works, you're welcoming a new, entirely different spectrum, and the wheels are going to fall off, which for Darren, unfortunately, they did. But now that you've overcome, you've tasted the victory, you know what it feels like. What's next? Are you going to go back? Because I mean, now you've like, do you go back and defend your crown? Do you go back to be like, hey, I've ran this race, I've won it, I just want to see how well I can push myself? Because as we both know, it's like you've tasted that, you're victorious, and it's like, yeah, it's like, but now you winning it, you've got in your mind, you could start to have that pressure of, I'm here to defend my title, right? And then you put a new set of pressures on yourself.
Yeah. I I think I'm going to stick to taking this next year off from running it, but I will definitely do it again. Um, it's a very special event, and I want to be so my hope going into next year is I want to be a part of the race. I want to see the race from the
The
perspective
outside.
that the outside. And I might we've talked about like maybe I could help with the live stream and all that kind of stuff too, but like when I'm in the race, like I only get to experience my race. Like even my wife, she's like, I'm so focused on you, like I don't pay attention to anybody
Yeah.
else. So I want to actually like see and experience and like see everyone's struggle and see that I just wanted to be a part of the race and experience it and help out and volunteer. And it's an amazing community. Like there's just an atmosphere there that is very rare. I haven't found it in any other race I've ever done. Like that's what kept me coming back. Like there's just an environment and an atmosphere that is powerful. In other races, you kind of taste a little bit of it, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's been a
it's a
great
big
race.
thing.
It's been a great race, and it's helped me to grow as a runner I feel like it's concentrated. You know what I mean? So like in this race, I will learn more about myself and how to be a better runner and where my weaknesses are than if I ran like three races. Like you just learn so much, and it's easy to pinpoint things too. So yeah, it's been a great race. It's helped me grow a lot. I'm very
Awesome.
grateful and appreciative for it.
Awesome stuff. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Aaron Dana, the winner of the Tennessee Mid-State Mile for 2024. And Aaron, as always, I enjoy hearing your adventures, man. It's good to hear it. It's raw. It. I can picture it. I mean, as a runner, you can just mentally get into it and hearing you struggle, and yeah, it's good stuff. And I look forward to continuously following you. Like I always say, I'll follow along. All right, man. I know I could sit here and talk all night with you, brother. It's good to catch up and hear all the great stuff. And we will circle back around again sometime in the near future. I look forward to seeing the adventures that you've got going on, and wish you all the best. And go Chiefs!
Go
I
Bills.
had to do. I had to do it.
It's a good rivalry,
It
man. I
is,
mean, we
brother.
had years where that wasn't the case. So like I enjoy it. I enjoy a good rivalry. So
It will probably be another good round this year, as long barring injuries and whatever else. It wouldn't surprise me if it's the Chiefs and the Bills for the AFC again. And
all
so
right.
if it is, we'll be bantering back and forth. So, man,
Exactly.
I appreciate you, brother, and
Thanks, bro.
blessings, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon, man.
Take
I
care, buddy.
appreciate it.